Hello, Holly. You alright?
Hi Joe, yeah I'm fine. You?
Good, Tar. I'm a bit bored though. There's not a lot to do in the holidays, is there?
Have you done your homework then?
What homework?
What do you mean, what homework? We've got that massive project to do.
What massive project?
The one about Alrewas.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's all about how the village changed in the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s.
What? I've no memory of that at all. Have you done yours yet?
No, not yet. That's why I was calling. Does your family know anything about the village?
I don't think so. They haven't been here that long.
Neither have mine. What are we going to do?
That's a good question.
Have you got a good answer?
No.
Thought not. Tell you what, I'll have a look on Google and I'll tell you if anything's there. Hang on, there's a book here that looks just the thing.
What's it called?
All about Alrewas in the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, with talking pictures and a magic map.
Yeah, right. Good joke.
No, I'm serious. That's what the book's called.
Sure, Holly. Of course I believe you. You found a book that just happens to have exactly the same name as the homework we've got to do.
Well, as a matter of fact, yes.
Pour the other one. It's got bells on it.
All right then. I'll order it and you'll see.
I won't hold my breath. Bye, Holly.
You're so annoying.
Is that really a book about Alrewas in the 60s to the 90s?
I told you it was, but you wouldn't believe me.
It seemed a little too good to be true.
Well, I haven't looked at it. Maybe it's a waste of money.
What does it mean by talking pictures?
I don't know. There aren't any batteries.
There's only one way to find out.
Here's a picture, but it's blank.
My name's George Carter. I used to live in Alrewas. I worked at the mill. Although quite what I'm doing in here, I don't know. But Alrewas is a magical place and you never quite know what's going to happen. All I know is I'm supposed to help you in some way.
You must mean our homework.
We've got to find out about Alrewas in the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s.
We've got to show how it's changed.
And we've only got a few days to do it.
We've got plenty of time, don't you worry. And as for the village changing, well, it's always been changing. Always will change. That's the beauty about communities. They never stay the same. Now, let's get down to business.
How can you help us?
Can you give us all the answers to our questions?
Yes, I could do that, but I want you to do some of the work, some of the exploring. Go and find some of those places in the village that have changed over the years. You won't be able to find them all, but the ones you do find should be able to answer some of your questions.
How do we do that?
We don't know much about the village. Our parents haven't been here very long.
Use the map. In a moment, when I've finished, go to the back of the book and find the magic map. It'll give you some clues about where to look. And when you find the places, look for the signs.
What just happened?
Well, we looked at a photograph and the man there told us to look for some signs.
I thought as much. Did it really happen?
Well, if it didn't, we were both having the same hallucination.
Good point. I'll tell you something though.
What?
Hallucination or not, it might help us to get our homework done.
Good point. Right, let's take a look at the map. Right, let's read what it says.
It says, this map shows you some of the special places in Alrewas. Find them and you'll find out about your heritage. Look for the signs, they will help you.
The signs. Look for the signs. You'll know them when you see them. Now, it's time for me to go and time for you to get on with your homework. So have fun.
Right, Joe, where should we go first?
What do we have to find out about?
4 things. Places, employment, recreation and education.
Right, let's start with places. What about the shape of the village itself?
What do you mean?
Well, if you look around, the houses are all different. Some are very old and some are brand new. It's like George said, things don't stay the same.
So as well as old and new houses, there are old and new roads. Where shall we go?
Let's go to the A38. It's the biggest road around here.
Okay then. What do we do now?
We need to find the signs.
What are the signs though?
I don't know, maybe there'll be a bolt of lightning or something?
Or it could be more simple than that.
How do you mean?
Signs, they could just be signs.
You mean like, well, signs?
Yep, you got it, Wonder Brain.
So let's look for some signs.
That looks like a sign to me.
What does it do?
I don't know, but I think we're about to find out.
Well, we came to live in Alrewas in 1961. And there's quite a story about it, really. We were married in 1960 and we wanted to live in Alrewas. Why don't we try and find a bit of land? Then we can build a house. And one day we just happened to stop outside here, which is our front garden now, and was a field then. So he went next door, which is...
Knocked on the door, it was a Mrs Bradford.
Mrs Bradford, One Church Road, which was the old coal wharf years ago to the canal. And she said the man who owned it was a farmer called Mr Jack Swinfield. And he said, oh yes, he didn't mind selling it, you know, it was only a little bit of his field at the back. So he brought in Wintertons, and Freddie Mallet and Brian looked at the piece of land, and Freddie Mallet said, why don't you have further back and then you'll be all along by the canal? And Brian said, oh, that's no good, we haven't got enough money to buy all that. And he said, oh, I bet Jack would let you have it for the same money. And Jack did.
And at the time, I was working in Lichfield, as Audrey said, but I was studying also to become an architect, because I wasn't an architect at that time.
We were just two bits of kids at the time, I mean.
And so I got that to do. I had a full-time job at work. Evenings were taken up with studying and drawing. And anyway, now I've got to set about designing a house, getting planning permissions. So I could get all the drawings finished, and then is when I contacted Arthur Ward, the builder from in Main Street, and Jack said, well, yes, he'd do a price for me, so I got a tender from him in due course, and it all worked out all right. Well, anyway, we sorted all that out, and we actually moved into the caravan, which your mum bought. I set my drawing board up in the caravan on the table.
There were happy times, we had lovely times.
And that was it. Well, we started building on the 19th of May 1962. We actually started, and the house became secure, if you like, secure enough to think about moving in on the 29th of October in 1963.
Where the dentist is, that was I think it was a VG store, and you had, where Paul's Newsagents was, which you know, Co-op, that was a sort of, I don't know, general store of some sort. Then you had the Co-op. Then there was a fish and chip shop, was a haberdassery. Opposite there, you had Hart's Garage, which is now the hairdressers and the Chinese.
All your bike
and
stuff and
bike bits and stuff like that.
yeah.
That's the hairdressers now, isn't it?
I don't know. It's actually opposite the Co-op in the village.
Yeah, it's
I'm sure it's a hairdressers or
yeah.
Barker's, yeah, I had Barker's. And further up on the left there was a very good little shop, ironmonger's type of place. You come home, they were still open 8 o'clock at night.
There was a hairdressers down Wellfield Road, 17 salon, and there was, not that I'm an expert on hairdressers, and there was a hairdressers down opposite the surgery, Top Knots.
There used to be a little shop next to the post office, and I used to babysit for the Mr. Rathbone in the chemist, and he used to send me over for his pipe tobacco, tins of pipe tobacco from that shop. And then there was the shop that is now Alrewas Electronics, you know, the burglary, that used to sell Midland County's ice cream, and we used to get raspberry ripple ice cream on a stick.
And where the British Legion is now used to be a transport cafe.
Oh yeah, Tree. Was it Tree?
It was called
Tree Cafe.
It was called the Tree Cafe. It
That
was
was
called
it,
the Ace
yeah.
Cafe at one time.
Mum worked at it there at one time.
That was
didn't
a transport cafe where lorry drivers used to use A38. They would stop, and some of them would stop overnight, but they would stop for a cup of tea or a piece of toast and that type of thing.
she? And it was a happy eater. After the Tree Cafe,
He did,
it was
yeah,
a
that's
happy
right. He did. He
eater.
become a happy eater.
Because we used to
yeah.
go down in the Happy Eater and have a cup of coffee.
One business that I really remember was Mr. and Mrs. Dickinson. Now, if you walk up Main Street, going up towards the bridge where you can turn to Walk Field, there's 2 houses there now, but that used to be Mr. and Mrs. Dickinson's shop. And Mr. Dickinson sold cold meats and sort of a general store. And Mrs. Dickinson used to have all these jars of sweets and used to go and buy sweets by the quarter. So I vividly remember I used to go up there. We used to go and spend our pocket money up there, which was brilliant. And they were a really lovely old couple, and they were always as old as the hills. They always seemed to be old.
And then there was, we had Barker's, but that's not long gone, has it? Then there was a sewing shop where the chip shop was.
There was 2 Barker's shops. There was 2
There was
grocery
Barker's
shops.
was up the other end, and that was also a video shop.
That's right. It did become you had Dickinson's shop first.
Oh, and Dickinson's, yeah, at the
Side
top
of Kent's
Main Street.
Bridge.
Yeah.
Dickinson's, is that right? And that's obviously not there anymore. So I used to regularly go there. Mum used to send me off to go and get bits and pieces from there because it was so close to the house. So
Going down the Main Street, you had Dickinson's in the canal. Opposite was the paper shop, Paul's, which was Paul's. Then it became, I think, an antique shop. Then it was a fishing tackle shop. And no, it's not just a house.
Mum and Dad started in the newsagents business in 1961. In 1962, Dad started to do the Sunday newspapers in the outline areas of Fradley, Rodditch, and on the caravan site by the Mucky Duck. My younger brother Trevor and I used to do the outline deliveries on our bicycles, and we would meet up at the camp where Dad would be, and sometimes Trevor would drive the van around the caravan site and I would sit in the back and throw the papers at the caravans.
But when we moved in the caravan...
Yes, when we were in the caravan while we were building the house here.
The first morning we woke
The very first
up...
Sunday morning it was. We woke up and we wondered what on earth this bumping and thumping was that was right next to us where we were. And anyway, we looked out, went to investigate, and there was people coming and going into the shed, which was next door.
And it was the Sunday newspapers they were selling.
In 1962, Dad was approached by Mr. Charlie Minns, the local Sunday wholesaler, who happened to live in Alrewas, and we started to do the Sunday papers from a shed in Alrewas on the Crown Car Park with the permission of Elvis's dad, Mr. Stan Paul.
And after it was a chip shop, Ben Paul, Robert Paul's father, had it. It was a paper shop for a while.
yeah, I can remember that.
Yes.
I just about remember that.
Ben Paul, Robert's brother, started his first lot of papers on a Sunday when Will Fisher gave them up in the Crown Yard.
I did a paper round when I was old enough, probably about 12 or 13. My round used to be along Main Street, and at that time I was working for Ben Paul, Robert's dad, and that was based at the old shop down at the bottom of Kent's Bridge on Main Street. So it's quite a big round that I used to do along Main Street, quite a lot of houses. I always had my bag full of really heavy newspapers. They all seemed to read the Times and the Observer and all the big newspapers that weighed a lot.
In 1963, Mr. Fisher wanted to stop doing the newspapers, and Dad bought the rounds off him, and we moved to 115 Main Street.
As I got a bit older, I then sort of did another job for the newsagents, and that was sort of to go around the village and collect all the newspaper money from the locals. And I believe that I took over the round from one of the Lathbury boys, and I used to do it with Viv Nunes. We used to sort of go knocking on the doors and collecting the money. But one of my favourite roads was in Wellfield Road, where a lot of the elderly customers there, they'd sort of hide all the money for us and let us know where it was, so we could sort of just go and pick the money up, or they'd offer, invite us into the house, and used to like having a chat. And it always used to take me sort of twice as long as it should have done to collect the money, because I was always chatting to people along the way.
We stayed at 115 Main Street until 1975, when Harvey's hardware store became available, and Dad bought the freehold, and we moved to 45 Main Street in 1975.
The village has become really busy, and when I was on the council last time we got the bypass in. That's been an absolute boon, saved the village.
Well, it was getting to the stage where it was getting busy through the village. Then there was getting more heavy stuff coming through the village, and they've been on about this bypass for a while.
The traffic coming through there, yes, on a Monday morning it was terrible. Heavy wagons coming through. You took your life in your own hands.
We used to have lorries going from Tamworth to Rugeley past the front door.
But I mean, all the traffic that came, obviously, down from Kingsbury down the 513, had got to come straight through the village.
Because you used to come from either or and you used to have to, if you come from Burton, you had to cut across the dual carriageway straight into Wellfield Road. There was no slip road, all it was the A38 with a gap in the middle.
The flyover was a big impact, and that was great for us because when I was a young teenager, it was probably, I can't remember, it must have been about 10 or 11 when that was built, I can't remember now. But it was great, it was a massive playground. Someone built a massive playground at the bottom of the field and we just went and played there.
Oh, it made a massive difference. I mean, you can't imagine now what it would have been like. And when you think of the junction down at Leasley's, the dog-leg junction, you know, you've got to go over and up the carriageway, but then turn left, you know. I mean, it was a nightmare. And I started to think the odds are getting shorter all the time, especially in the winter.
Yeah, when
you've got to get over the A38, there's more and more traffic, it was faster traffic.
But a village is its people. They make it. A civic society may take on responsibility for its local environment. That can mean an attempt to preserve an old world charm. But a dynamic society will turn its attention to the realities of a growing community. It would be a false hope that nature will not need assistance. The effects of tree planting are not seen overnight, though more people are becoming aware of the need to replace trees. We owe to the future the pleasure that we have in a fine tree.
I think it was in the mid-60s, probably around about 65, when I stood on the corner of Wellfield Road and the main street, outside the black and white half-timbered cottage on the corner. And we witnessed and watched with despair the most beautiful half-timbered building being demolished.
It was formed in 1969.
The first chairman was Geoffrey.
Geoffrey Burns Mace was the very first chairman.
A committee was started, the chairman was proposed, and the committee was formed. And we published our constitution.
The purpose of it, really, when it was formed, as far as I can recall, is that it was felt by a number of people that it could do with something else in this village, apart from the parish council, who obviously were doing their job as they were required to do, but it needed somebody who could do something a bit different and be a bit more maybe controversial with things.
One of the very first things you did was when you did the lovely picnic site by the mill stream.
Well, that was in 1970 that it was decided that as a project the Civic Society would set about actually doing something there that could be like a legacy to the Civic Society forever, which it obviously still is, and is wonderful.
And Ken Jackson owned that land, didn't he? And he was on the Civic Society at the time, and because they had to give him some money, he had to be given some money, he let them buy it just legally, for £1, didn't he?
Legally, he wasn't allowed to just
he couldn't just give it.
Say it's yours. You had to sell it.
So he let them have it for £1.
Which,
and I mean, it's still as nice today. It's one of the lovely things that everybody talks about in the village, isn't it?
It's interesting. It's a bit like growing old with someone. You don't quite always notice it. When you suddenly look at the old pictures, oh my God! But it's been a slow growth, and definitely a growth. But as you say, so much is familiar. You don't always spot it.
I don't actually think there was an uproar in those days like there is today about development. I really don't.
The Mickleham wasn't one because it was out off the edge of the village, if you like. I think there was more controversy, shall we say, but there wasn't the power. The people of the village accepted they didn't rebel like they do today.
So housing developments have sprung up all over the place. I mean, I remember walking up, sort of when you go up towards where the navigation used to be, which is now the Jaipur, is it? Jaipur restaurant. There's a whole new housing estate built over there, which was never there, so that's really changed.
There's a lot of new houses and it's got bigger. I think it's still got the village atmosphere, a lot of it, but there's a lot of growth, isn't there?
I've been here 47 years. During those years we brought up 2 lads, us being townies and the lads obviously village lads, and a wonderful life really. Such a difference, the freedom that the kids get, and still now. And we have wonderful neighbours and a lot of friends in the village, and let's hope it continues.
It was at his instigation that I did the weekly draw for the village hall, which was drawn at the Dragon. We sold tickets that were on a roll, a bit like railway tickets used to be, and there was about 10 collectors, and we had some bags made and so many tickets in each bag, and they collected around the village for the village hall. Whatever we collected went to the village hall, but I don't remember any amounts. I know we had prizes of £5 and £10. I know that the loo upstairs was the ladies, and the outside there was a sort of a wall built up on 3 sides with the tank, because we used to have oil, yes, for the central heating, and that was the roof of the gents, and it was very very basic. It was a very good wood floor, and underneath, between the floorboards and the what supported them is that there was these wedges, and there was an awful lot of wedges, and it was a faulty idea to my mind, because these wedges gradually fell out and you had to get underneath and pop them back in again. If it's too rigid, it wouldn't do it. So for a dance floor, it's got to be slightly sprung. Yes, well, we went through the front doors, of course, and that there was a gents' cloakroom that side and a women's cloakroom that side. Then it fed into the hall.
The committee decided that they wanted to change things. They needed to change things. It needed to be given a facelift and be able to do other things. Now, they had an attempt previously in 1962, well, a thought about doing it, but that was abandoned. But what that scheme required was actually to acquire a piece of land and give back a piece of land at the rear of the existing hall so that it could be squared off, and they thought make a bit of sense at that time. Well, it never happened. 75, 76, and it was desired to carry on and get cracking and do something properly that time. Well, Sid Evans had actually organised loans and a lot of finance, and a lot was raised locally.
We raised ever such a lot.
At the end of the day, I was approached by Sid to would I do the drawings, would I be the architect for the scheme? So I said, of course I would, I'd love to do. So there was quite a bit of work, but between us, we sorted it all out, and I think pretty well what you see at the moment now.
I'm going to say it's more or less the same.
And in fact, the stage was at the other end, I may have told you before, was at the other end of the hall. And I can remember Don and Brian Hall had this, I don't know what you call it now, great big sort of thing, like a trolley jack or something, but a huge one.
And Don Griffin.
Don Griffin helped you, yes, I remember Don.
We actually did it by turning it round. We had to turn it right round so that it fitted the other end in the direction that we wanted it to be. And we did it by using car jacks, actually. We put a car jack under each corner. And I'd measured it, obviously, being an architect.
And it would just go round.
I measured the diagonal dimension of this.
Yeah, it would just...
And it would just go round with about an inch to spare on each of the radiators either side.
Then when the village hall was refurbished, the first time round, Quinton took on the role of coordinating it. And I remember the whole family, my son says he can remember being round there painting the village hall. Everybody had to go, and we got a group of people and used to go around. But there was a great feeling of community there, and it was ours. We had ownership of it.
Must have been back in the 90s. It was poor. The windows were the original windows, which were very small pane, narrow glass, thin glass. The putty was falling out. They're ever being repaired. At that time, the existing committee were looking at a new hall, and that was the most likely place for the new hall was out on the end of Fox Lane. But when it went for public consultation, nobody liked the idea of the hall being out there, as it was then, on its own.
Wow, that was cool. I felt like it was happening right inside my head. I think it was inside our head. Nice. Right, what next? Well, we've done places. Let's try education now. Well, it's pretty obvious where we go now, isn't it? Of course, the chip shop. The chip shop? Okay, I get it. Humour. Well done. All right, Mr. Sarcastic, let's get going. We need to look at the map to find the sign. Righto, let's have a look. Let's split up. Call me if you find it. Well, I think we know what's going to happen next. To infinity and beyond.
I was interviewed by an inspector from Staffordshire in Burton at the old Gill Street offices, and he said, you will have a job somewhere in Staffordshire in September, but I don't know where. And then 2 weeks later I had a phone call one morning at 9:10 from Mr. Hayton, who was the head then, to say, can you come round to the school, lass? And I rushed round thinking there was a problem with my children because I'd just dropped them off, and he said, I've got a job going in the reception class, would you like it?
Well, Mr. Hayton rang me up, and at the time I was helping Will Fisher out at the post office, delivering papers, because I was at home, and I went to the school with his paper, and he came out on his bicycle to go and put a notice in the post office window, asking for somebody to work. And he said, oh, I no need to go my ride. He said, how about you coming and working at school? And that was at the old school.
When I first started, there were only 3 of us in the school. There was me, a Miss Naden, I was the reception, she was the next teacher, and Joy Rowe. And we were the only ones because it was just the infants, Key Stage 2, or the juniors as they were then, were all up at the old school.
I was there for 8 years, and they built this new school. And Mr. Hayton said, Mrs. Greenleaf, you can apply for the cook's job. And I said, oh, no. He said, oh, yes, you can. He says, there's applications and you can go. And I said, oh, I don't know so much about that.
I think we did everything that we do now, but we weren't so prescriptive, and we were led by the children's needs. We weren't being pushed by government or by outside agencies who were just dealing with figures.
And at the time it was Mrs. Coates was a governor, and what's that? Anderson, Peggy Anderson's husband. And then there was all the people from Stafford that interviewed me, and there was 7 of us that had to get interviewed. There wasn't just me.
Mr. Hayton was the first head. He was a very bluff Yorkshireman, and he called all the, because it was only ladies who worked there. Mr. Shear was at the junior school, but he called us all lass. And he was a very plain speaking man. He actually said to me one day, I'd been doing some work with the reception class, and we were doing subtraction because we'd done addition and they were getting quite good. And when he saw now it was a record book rather than a focus book in those, a forecast book. So you wrote down what you had done that week. And I put that I'd been doing subtraction, and I was called into his office at the end of the week. And he said, right lass, he said, I noticed you've been doing subtraction with them. I said, yes. He said, don't push them too far, they're only babies.
I could name a lot of them. My favourite teacher was Mrs. Jacks, which I believe went on to teach you, I think, as well. Did she teach you,
Don't remember,
Mrs. Jacks?
no, not Mrs. Jacks, I don't think she was there.
Mr. Eastham and Mr. Sheffield. Mr. Sheffield was the first teacher that I'd ever seen with a beard.
And I had to go to Stafford for 7 weeks, every day, backwards and forwards to Stafford, to get my sitting guilds, you see, to take over at the school. And then they built the school. Well, the school was being built while I was doing that, and
we didn't see him very much. He never came out of his room, never came into the staff room, didn't do assemblies. He was a whiz with a screwdriver if something fell off the wall. But basically, it was him and us.
Mr. Hayton used to always, he was the headmaster when I was at the primary school, and Mr. Hayton used to always wear a very small grey jacket, and it was always like cut off at this point, but he could never quite get it done up because he was quite a large gentleman. And the jacket actually, it looked more like a work overall, perhaps if he worked in I won't say a butcher's, but it was a strange thing, and that's all he ever wore. I can remember that about him.
First dinner at Alrewas New School was roast lamb, because this is what I did for my test at Stafford, because you had to have a test at Stafford. I had roast lamb, roast potatoes, boiled potatoes, cabbage and gravy, and they had apple tart and custard.
When he decided to retire because he said education was going in a direction he didn't go into it for. And so he and his wife retired at the same time. And the governors, I was a governor then, and we decided to get Delise Sanders, who still lives in Mill End Lane, who was an artist, to do a picture for him. We commissioned a painting of Alrewas, and he refused to accept it because he said, I don't want any fuss. He said, I just want to go.
There was 5 of them in the kitchen under me. Well, they'd never been in the kitchen before, so of course I got to learn them what to do as well. So it was a bit hard the first month.
We had a very different head then called Mrs. Morris, who was very tiny. And on her first morning with us in September, and she sat at the end and she said, I would like you all to know that when decisions have to be made, I may ask your opinion, but at the end of the day, it is my school and it will be my decision. And we were all a little bit shell-shocked, really, after Mr. Hayton. But she was very efficient. You couldn't falter on that. She gave us all a huge file and said, that is the curriculum you will teach.
Hayton had just left, I think, and it was Mrs. Morris. Yes, Mrs. Morris when I was there. So, Maggie Fairclough taught me, and now she's taught his daughter as well. So
your granddaughter,
my niece. So it's quite a.
She's taught everybody.
She's taught everybody in the village. That's right. But it's quite weird working in school that I remember sitting in here and all the teachers that I had and which ones I enjoyed better and which ones I hated, and all the bits like that. So yeah, it's quite strange working at the school.
I remember I did gymnastics from quite a young age. We had a teacher called Mrs. Smith. She was a really, really small lady, and she used to do our gymnastics. And I remember winning the gymnastic competition, which was a real big surprise at the time. That was really good. We did inter-school quizzes, so we went over to Fradley and we did quizzes like that, which is good. So yeah, there's quite a few things that were.
And then I had two little boys that wouldn't stay at dinner time. They didn't like coming home. They didn't like staying at school dinners. Bless them. And they wanted to. They run off home, and so one of the girls went and fetched them back. And one day, I must tell you this because it's such a joke, it's stuck in my mind. One of the girls said to me, "Give him one of them blue plates." We got blue plates and white plates. All the kids had white plates, but they've got a few blue ones, you see, and blue dishes. And I said to these two lads, two brothers there was, I don't know what their names was now. I said, would you eat your dinner if Mrs. Greenleaf put it on a blue plate? Yes, and they never run away again.
I can remember Mrs. Faircliffe was class 1, Miss Nadine was 2, Miss Rowe was 3.
Oh, yes, I remember Mrs. Rowe.
Mrs. Bickley did 4, Mrs. Jones did 5, Mrs. Green did 6, Mrs. Smith did 7. 8 was Mrs. Bates, 9 was Mrs. Hayton, and 10 was Mr. Shears.
Lyle was what you might call a culture shock after Mrs. Morris. Whereas if you went into Mrs. Morris's room, there would be one file on the table, or one sheet of paper she was dealing with. When you went into Lyle Haddon's room, there was a whole heap of papers, and he could never find what he wanted. And he had a system, did Lyle, that every so often he would clear his desk into the bin, because if it was important, they'd write again.
And I hated class 2. And all the classes have changed now, but class 2 used to have a raised area, a dais, and we used to have to sit on it every morning for registration. I hated it with a passion, and when we did one of the jobs at the school, we had to rip it out, and I had so much fun with the lads pulling this dais area out, because I used to sit on there every morning and hate it with a passion.
And
cried. Yeah, I just hated school with a passion. So it was great fun that we would rip it out, a bit of where I spent some of my life that caused me so much pain.
He was a very quiet boy, always very polite, very quiet, did as he was told, never put a foot wrong. But it was always very obvious that he wasn't that wasn't his favourite place to be, shall we say. But he was certainly not, he wasn't disruptive or anything. He was one of those children who knew he got to come to school and he put up with it.
I was quite a while cooking proper dinners, what I call proper dinners, and then they introduced a thing that you put with the mince. It was, I don't know whether it was soya or something. It was in the shape of mince, in a bag, and, well, I don't know whether I ought to say this, you know. I used to put it in the dustbin because I wouldn't give it to them.
I took the reception class. Our topic had been dinosaurs, and I took them to Matlock Bath, because next to Gulliver's Kingdom was a big dinosaur park, which was, I'd been to look at it, and I knew it would be good. But as part of the day, we went to Gulliver's Kingdom as well, and had a wonderful day. It was a day very hot and sunny, and on the way home, it was very quiet on the coach. And because it was very quiet, I went down the coach, and every child was fast asleep, everyone, and they slept all the way home.
Because you couldn't, you see, I had to mince my own meat and all that sort of thing. There was nothing, it wasn't brought in on a tray for me. And the butcher would bring it in a lump. I used to have to bone everything, bone the meat. If we had lamb stew, I used to have to bone all the legs and
In I would say the first 20 years of my teaching, nobody ever watched me teach. Apart from the first year, somebody came in, an inspector came in, and never watched me teach. And that's the difference.
My time, you want to know, it was 8 till 3, and I used to go down there at 6:45, so those kids could have a proper cooked dinner.
Yes, it was Liz Bates and Pat Shear and I. And Liz was one of those inspirational teachers who just made a connection with children. When my son went into her class, I wasn't sure how he'd cope with Liz because he was quite quiet. And when he came home the first day, I said, how do you get on with Mrs. Bates? Oh, he said, she's great, and she said she can shout louder than you. So that was it, she'd made a hit with him. And Liz wanted to do the drama. She was very good at drama. She would write our Christmas plays. Pat Shear was one of the most inspirational teachers I've ever seen. He was an amazing man. He got the results, but he had the relationship with the children. And we decided, there was talk about it, because Quentin and I were involved in the drama, about having a drama club. Well, we ran it on a Saturday morning, because you couldn't do it after school in those days. We ran it on a Saturday morning. And it wouldn't be allowed nowadays. We'd take the children over Witchner Fields and all sorts of places. And John Colston got involved, which I'm sure you've got on the film. It was in the early days of video cameras. Do you remember when there were huge things? And the school got one. We got a video camera, and so I think it was Pat Shear who wanted to who was keen to film it. And of course the children thought it was wonderful.
I go in the butcher's now, and if I say, I go, and if Adrian's there, he'll say, oh, this woman, she used to make some lovely steak and kidney pies. That's what I get wherever I go.
It has it's changed tremendously. Not all for the better. I think it's harder. I think it's a much harder job now. And I do think, I strongly believe that side of the teaching, which is a craft, they all know the science. You know, they know how to plan, they know what all the standards are and all these sorts of things. But there's the other side of teaching, which is a craft and which is about children.
Wow, that was amazing! I never knew the school had so much history. It's just always been there. I guess you're right. We just turn up, do our lessons, and never really think about what has happened before. I'd rather think that's what this is all about. How do you mean? Think about it. This is making us think about the past and how Alrewas is a special place. You're right. I suppose knowing something about the past helps us to understand the present. And the future. Right. For example, school. There are lots of things that are different now. Like computers. Exactly, but lots of other things are the same. Things change, but others don't. You're right. I never thought of that before. Come on, let's find some more things out. Where next? Let's look at the map. I think the next bit of the project is about employment. Where could that be? Here, what about the mill? But that's just houses. Well, it is now, but it was a mill. What, like a windmill? Yes, but not a windmill. You know where we met this morning, by the mill stream? Yes. Think about it, the mill stream. Oh, I see. You mean the mill is powered by water? I reckon so. Dad was explaining it to me when we went to feed the ducks. Let's go and find out. Look, here's the mill, but where's the sign? This one's easy. Look, it's here. Brilliant. Well, here we go again. Indeed.
Originally, I think in the 60s, there were 4 doctors, Dr. Rushen and Dr. Taylor.
Bill Taylor.
In Barton. And then Dr. Livingston and Dr. Platt, and then a Dr. Smith. And I think probably in the 50s or 60s, they shared the practice between Alrewas and Barton.
At the surgery was Dr. Platt and Dr. Livingstone, and at the time they had a secretary called Mrs. Singer, just for a short while, and then Mary Shermer took over when Mrs. Singer retired, and the receptionist was Mrs. Bates, and another lady called Jill Gibson.
And then I came and met Dr. Livingston, and I just thought it was such a lovely village, and I just liked the feel of the place. But at the time, Dr. Livingston had just split up with another doctor, and they were working in separate surgeries. So anyway, so I was a bit nervous about joining Dr. Livingston. There were 2 practices, but the family practitioner committee, who were in charge, then said, no, you join.
I started working at the surgery because my mum retired and I was qualified as a midwife, so I actually took my mum's job, and that was in 1968. So that really was the reason.
And so I joined him in 1977, and it was quite different. There were 2 doctors, 1 receptionist. The surgery opened at 8:30, and we had to be out by 10:30 because Dr. Livingston would always leave by 10:30. The doors were locked, and then the answer phone, the telephone, was switched through to one of our wives.
Yeah, as the surgery expanded, because of the village expanding, we had another doctor arrive, Dr. Horton, and he introduced different clinics and, like chiropody and things, different things were happening at the surgery then.
Yes, I came in 1984, having been a trainee in Coleshill, which is sort of near the NEC. So we'd left South Africa in about 1980, and we were looking for something not too hectic, really. And in those days, there was really tough competition to get into practices, and I guess 100 applicants was average at the time. And a friend of a friend nudged Rob in the ribs and said, it's worth meeting this guy, to which I'm eternally grateful.
We'd realised that we needed a bit more help. I wasn't really happy with this no one in the surgery between 10:30 and 2. So that changed. So there was someone there most of the day. And I can't quite remember when we took on Aline.
A couple of years after Dr. Horton arrived, he asked me to be the practice nurse at the surgery. So I agreed because the home deliveries of babies, were dwindling because everybody was going into hospital.
So we needed more space. So we pushed out, looking at the surgery to the right in 1979, and added 2 new consultation rooms, one for Stuart, one for myself, and then an examination room in the middle.
That's the current waiting room, the new waiting room. Was that first extension?
Yeah. And that's so the practice developed quite a bit, but then it was Shake coming in 1984, and our ideas to train, further develop the practice. And then I think it was after UK, I can't remember whether it was after UK, we heard a rumour that the telephone exchange next door to the surgery was up for sale and that the doctors were going to buy it.
Yes, that was as I arrived.
Yeah.
He said, I must tell you, there's a rumour around that we're buying the telephone exchange. I said, oh, are we? He said, I don't know. Are we? And we did.
So we put in a sealed bid. It was a sealed bid.
Yeah.
And we put in a bid for £2,000 and we weren't sure whether we'd get it. And just about the time you came, we got the telephone exchange.
Shaped like a loaf of bread, a single building. And we filled in the gap between the surgery and the telephone exchange.
The gap is behind is the bit behind the electricity substation.
Yeah.
Yes, as part of my job as practice nurse then was to do blood tests, smear tests, ECGs, hearing tests, asthma tests, minor surgery with the doctors, travel and baby vaccinations, and various bits of counselling as well.
And in those days we were still doing our own on-call, and the trainee who was with us for a year was attached to the practice, and we bought a bungalow in the village for the trainee to live in because they needed someone to live to be on call. So they shared our on-call 1 in 3. And then I'm not quite sure why, but the bungalow next to the surgery came up for sale. And it was quite a bit bigger than the bungalow that we got for the trainee or for the registrar. But we decided it would be a good opportunity. So we sold the little bungalow we had in Walkfield, and we bought the bungalow next door to the surgery, not at that time with the intention of blending it into the surgery, but just as a place for the registrar, and with a view that sometime in the future we might be able to link it up. And then I think it was in 1995 that we linked it up.
As the village grew, many more patients registered, and we then had 3 partners, Dr. Horton, Dr. Siegel and Dr. Mager Jones. And we had extensions built, making more accommodation to have more clinics and lots more things going on. And then computers arrived, which I absolutely hated. I can cope with them now, but not at the time. They were very alien.
Interestingly, the village, has been a slow development, but I'd say the surgery's developed quicker, in terms of pace. And what I'm referring to there is staff and nursing staff and services. And we started training in 87. I'd say, if there were trajectories, now the village has grown, but the surgery's gone on a steeper trajectory.
Because it was so busy at the surgery, we needed, more help really. But I really didn't want to work full time because I'd got the kids. And so I knew about Paula, and I knew she'd fit in very well at Alrewas surgery. And I asked Paula if she would join. And all the doctors very much agreed with it. I think it took Paula a little while to decide. It was a bit of a shock, but she's still there and obviously enjoys it.
In 1994, I was working at St Giles Hospice in Lichfield, just very part-time. And I think in about May, I was shopping with baby Jake in the village, in the co-op I think, and ran into Aline Jackson. We were just chatting, and she said they were looking for a new nurse, and would I be interested? Would I like to come along to the surgery for a chat? And in fact, that's exactly what I did. So she, Rob, Horton, and I chatted in the treatment room just over the way, very informal. And I started just a few weeks after that. That was 20 years ago.
1960s onwards, and the builders slowly diminished. When you come into Main Street, there was Mays, Alrewas, W.E. Wards, Bannisters, Arthur Ward. They were there then, plus an estate yard, which did the building as well, which was in Main Street. So, but after that, as other builders came in, developers came into the village, bought farms and developed them, and the village seemed to shrink because a lot of small builders set up from out of the village and came into the village and did work.
The people like Wards, they had everything on site, didn't they?
That's right. Wards
you did your apprenticeship in Wards joinery shop, didn't you?
That's right, and you did both. You were classed as a carpenter and joiner in those days. You worked in the shop and you worked outside. And as an apprentice, if the boss sent you somewhere, you went. Whether it was a plumber's mate or driving a lorry or whatever, that was part of your learning curve. But it was a good learning curve because you saw other trades.
Father used to chop meat, put salt and pepper, India pepper, to it. That's all he did. No preservatives, just salt and pepper. Delicious. And then after the war, the country got clever. In the 60s and 70s, and all the food went chemical.
My grandfather, I can just about remember going to W.E. Ward's yard, which is obviously where the converted now, it's White Hart Mews. I can just about remember going there into the joinery shop, which was at the first floor above behind David Butcher's house.
Even the ingredients we put into the sausage, it would keep its colour on the counter for a week, and it wouldn't go off.
Then I left there and went to the NHBC in 1966 until 1979. I was headhunted by Bailey Construction, which I stayed there till it went, before it went bump in 1990,
That's right.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Richard joined us, I had him as an apprentice. He went to Tech the same as I did.
But my daughter couldn't eat my own sausage, and it was all these chemicals, enhancers and things. And I went to a meat trades fair at Harrogate. It had been around about 1980. Yes. And I said to a man who was in business when father was, as a lad then, and he sold the real McCoy, just like Dad did. And I said to him, I said, Gordon, I said, I want sausage just like Dad did. See? And he knew exactly what I wanted. I told him Dad's recipe, and he makes it for me.
I started February 1993, we had a Prince's Trust loan to start RJK going. Dad was gone back to Bailey's, well, we'd left Bailey's at the time, and I was just starting one man and a wheelbarrow. That's all it was ever going to be. Did some jobs for Peter Coates, Patrick Curran with my first customers.
I said, I gave him a big long list of all different flavours I wanted. Hi, that's great, he says. Where's Alrewas? I said, it's near Burton-on-Trent. Hey, that's south of Manchester. I said, just a bit. I don't want to go south of Manchester. I said, you do now. He's in his third factory.
And then it just sort of snowballed from then, and we took more and more guys on. Then Dad came from East Staffsborough Council back to join me, and that's where we are today.
It was just a converted cart shed and this old cottage. That was the manufacturing area. That was the abattoir. And we used to kill in the old black and white building, which is the office now.
In going back and working around the village and all the houses that my grandfather worked on when he was being built, and all the houses that Bannisters built, and working up and down like Wellfield Road as one where Bannister's built a load.
JT Leasley built.
It was one of my Uncle Don's shops. He was born here, Donald was, and he went 1932. He married Ruth Hall from Kings Bromley, and they did very well there. And when my cousin, who inherited the shop, wanted to give it up, Uncle Donald came and said, I would like Anthony to do it. And Anthony just left school, and we took the chance, and that was the first. Tamworth, yes. One of Anthony's friends is the landlord, and he said, look, I've got a butcher shop, fully equipped, why don't you take it? And we did. And that's happened again at Woolerton, which looks like being a flagship shop. It's going really well.
I came to Alrewas Post Office on February the 3rd, 1988, with my late husband Larry Martin, and so I've been there just nearly 26 years now, retiring on the 22nd of January 2014, because we were looking for a post office, my husband and I, and they did mail work there, which meant you had to get up at 6 o'clock, and the post people came into the premises and sorted the post. And because I couldn't get up early in the morning, I decided it wasn't for me. So we then took a post office on at Stapenhill in Burton-on-Trent. And then in 1988, went up for sale again, and they'd taken the mail work away from the post office and then did it at Burton-on-Trent. And I decided I would go for it again. So we got it in February. We were still running our post office at Stapenhill, so one of us was over at Stapenhill and one of us was here for 3 months. When we first came, it was a very busy village post office. We'd had a busier post office, we'd had a 3 position. We came here, it was only a 2 position. So I think we thought we were going to semi-retire when we came here, but the house had been added to over the years, and what we did was we spent a lot of time adding again to the house and bringing it more into the line with us. And then it changed. We lost a lot of customers. They seemed to take work off us. They stopped the pension books, and they wanted people to have it paid into the bank. A lot of people didn't want to do, but a lot of people did, and now they don't have the option to have it paid at the post office. They have to have it paid into the bank, so they've taken a lot of work from us now.
That's amazing. You know, I didn't realise that so many people used to work here in the village. Nowadays, people have to travel to go to work. They have to. There aren't enough jobs in the village for everyone. Shame. Think of all the car journeys it would save if everyone who lives here could work here. Yeah, never thought of that. Still, nothing we can do about it. No, but it makes you think, doesn't it? Right, come on. We've got one more section to do. Recreation. Brilliant. While we're talking about recreation, I'm thirsty. Let's go get a drink. That's better. We've been so busy I forgot how hungry I was. Me too, but I'm ready for our last section. Then we can get on with doing our homework and relaxing for the rest of the holiday. That gets my vote. So, where do we go next? Well, recreation is the last section, and that's all about having fun, doing sport, hobbies and things. So, where do we do all those things? Scout hut, school, church, Methodist hall, and of course the village hall. You mean this village hall? Look, here's the sign.
From junior school, I think probably Richard Haynes was somebody that I used to play with around at school. I played with sort of, there's a couple of neighbours that were at school. One was a year older, one was a year younger, Tracy and Sarah Heathcote, so they were my neighbours. We used to play a lot with those. There was Vicky Sherratt, a lady called Vicky Sherratt. She used to live on Wellfield, and we used to. We got to sort of, I suppose, about 9 or 10, and we were allowed out in the evenings. We just used to walk around the village for hours and hours and hours, and we just walked everywhere.
Leisure time, besides sort of going around to Claire's house, I spent a lot of time sort of playing over at Walkfield. And in those days there were some big concrete pipes over there, which I presume were left from when the Walkfield estate was built. And we used to spend ages playing in there, running in and out of them, hiding. And there was a lot of earth as well, which had been mounded up, and grass had grown over it over a period of time. Lots and lots of molehills on there. So we used to dig for all the moles. Not that we ever found any, but we used to sort of take our spades over and try digging for these moles.
I say walking around the village, going up to the weir where we weren't meant to go because Mum wouldn't let us, but we used to because they were at work all the time, so that was fine. And we used to walk sort of up the quarter-mile bridge, and there used to be a little, I think there still is, like a big piece of wood that goes across there, and we used to sort of dare each other to walk across there and stuff when we were little.
Well, because we lived near the fields, it was always, we played on the canal, around by the canal and the fields and all that sort of area, so we were always over there really, spent most of our time over there, the cricket pitches, and most of it seemed to be around the canal and the river. It was a lot of our younger life really, and out on BMXs, things like that really, so it was, that and skateboards, playing really, so there weren't many made recreational areas, so you had to go off and do your own thing really and do whatever. But
we used to just spend all our time outside. We were here, there and everywhere, and you used to go out in the morning and say to your mum, I'll be back for tea, and literally we were out all day.
It was nothing for me and my friends at the age of 13, 14, 15 to get on our push bikes, and we would cycle off to Lichfield and we would cycle off to Burton.
We'd go on the bus to Burton and we thought we were the coolest things. And I think I was about 14 the first time I went on a bus. It was ridiculous. We used to go to Burton and we used to go to McDonald's and we'd have a milkshake, and then we'd literally get on the bus and come back again.
And the level of the canal was a lot lower in those days, and by Lock Cottages there were some rocks that were sort of exposed out of the water, and we used to stand on there and play on there. And also in a few areas where the bends in the canal were, it was quite sort of sandy, so we used to pretend that it was the seaside and we were on the beach and have lots of fun there.
We used to ring. There used to be a phone box at the bottom of Wellfield Road. There used to be a phone box, I don't know if it's still there now, outside the chip shop, and then one at the War Memorial.
That's
and
right,
we used to
yeah.
ring the phone boxes to see who was out around the village.
I joined the show in 1970. I went along to the George and Dragon with a chap called Jack Swinfield, who was my neighbour. And we sat at the AGM of the show, and in the room there was Colonel Harrison as the president of the show. Tom Winterton was the incoming president, and I was nominated to go on the show council.
Subsequently I became involved in the Alrewas show, and during that time there were very large shows, and subsequently I became chairman in 1986.
Now in those days the show council was the great and the good of farming. All the farming families that you know for sort of a 5-mile radius were all in that room that evening, and when you think back it's quite amazing the number of people that were involved and actively involved.
It has moved from the times in the past where the committee used to meet in the George and Dragon and was made up purely of farmers and people involved in agriculture. Now it's a very wide spectrum, and that reflects the village as it is now.
The present chairman is Richard Kirtland. Now his grandfather and his father were show people, so that's 3 generations of one family.
So you've grown up with, and we're doing it again now, sort of thing. It's 3rd generation.
And the Alrewas show was known in as a Little Royal. Often beasts that had won at the Royal couldn't win at Alrewas.
One of the problems we had at the show in the early days, well in my early days, was the fact that we used to move around showgrounds. When I first joined, it was at Woolies, John and Reg Woolley at Fradley, opposite the Bull's Head. But then we decided, the Woolley brothers decided that we ought to have a change, so we moved off there, and then we went round lots of different farms. And I remember going with Jack Orcutt to see John Malabar, see if we could have a showground. And we were on John Malabar's ground for probably 2 years. We purchased our show field, our permanent showground that we have now, in 1997. I went to the auction and bid for the field. It was up for sale, and the bidding went up, and I stopped bidding at £40,000, and there was another bid against me, and then there was another bid after that, after I'd stopped. And the final bid went to Graham Ward of Fradley, and after the auction he came up to me and he said that you had stopped bidding, hadn't you? I said yes. He said okay. So I might want to come and see you to borrow the field off you then, Graham. Anyway, the next morning he phoned me and said that the show could buy the field for the price he'd bought it for, so he bought it on behalf of the show.
In 1997, with the help of the local farming and business community, we were able to acquire the site of the Alrewas show. The show had a loan and they managed to pay that loan back.
We ran a lot of social events over the next 5 years, and we managed to pay them back fully in 5 years. That was a major achievement for the show. We used to run social events about once a month and just keep raising money for the field fund. We were very fortunate in having donations from a lot of the village people, which was good, and the support from the village was excellent.
Subsequently, we had 2 very wet years, and very few people came through the door, and the show was with its back to the wall. It was clear, with the changes of pattern of agriculture, etc., the show was going to had to change.
The enthusiasm of a few people. We had a meeting in the village hall, and we decided that there was enough people interested to carry on with the show. It was a make or break meeting, really, and since then we've contained the show and gone from strength to strength, really.
Well, there were many exciting things at the show. We had a carnival which came back, a restoration of something many years ago. Mary Stanbrook and Doe Toon were the instigators of that.
Just different trends, and obviously as the people have changed who have looked after it, and there's farming's gone out of the area. I mean, there's no farms now in Alrewas, so when there's lots of farms, there was lots of cattle about, and it very much more an agricultural thing. And since my time coming back onto the committee is, yes, they said DEFRA you couldn't have animals, but we've proved that wrong, and the food hall, and just getting back to what we are is an agricultural, horticultural show.
We also did the CB club in the village with a few helpers, and we used to run charity events. We did one pram race for a little lad in the village who'd got MS and raised about £400, which in those days was quite a lot of money.
One of the other leisure activities that I became involved in was being part of the CB radio club, and we used to meet sort of over at the cricket club in Alrewas, a big crowd of us, and we sort of got quite a fraternity really of all these CB radio fanatics with all of their silly names. I think I was known as Childminder at the time, and it was a real good sort of social event. And one of the people who did come along was actually Ben, who was the local policeman at the time. But of course at that point CB radios sort of weren't legal, but we felt that we were okay as soon as Ben came along, so that was okay.
And even the local Bobby had got a handle. He won't admit it, but he used to come.
With his wife, Sue.
Good days, good days.
The club was called the Village Broadbanders, and everybody used to have a handle. Mine was China Dong, John's was Pied Piper, even the bar staff had a handle. Joan Green was P Green, Roy Walker was Rusty Walker, and we used to have loads of fun events.
During the CB days we used to hold all sorts of things, and football matches was a classic, which we had juniors, ladies and men's teams, and we had matches against Lichfield Three Spires Club. And on one occasion I dressed up as the nurse, wig, big pair of glasses, nurse's uniform that didn't fit very well. The lady I bought it up, it was quite a slender person. Fishnet stockings and size 10 trainers, looked very elegant. But I was lucky with it because nobody recognised me. But during that match, one little lad broke his collarbone. Unfortunately, the only bit of kit I'd got was a sling. So we managed to patch him up, but we did need a bit of medical assistance.
I moved to the village in, I think, 1976 when I was 15. And I was here a week, and my dad went in the pub and asked who was running the cricket club and who should I see to take my boy down there, and he saw Rusty Walker, and or he was told to go and see Rusty Walker. So within a week I was in the under-16 team, and I'm still there now. So historically there's always been a cricket club in the village, and these days it's not only useful for the cricket in itself, but it's become a social club, and it's used by the other sports teams, the football clubs.
The Orderly Malum in his yard had got an ex-RAF army hut, one of the big 4-foot sections, and we got permission after fighting the committee, of the older members of the committee, and we worked all hours, Saturdays, Sundays, nights, 10 o'clock at night, and we built it. But then the arsonist struck one night, and poor George Burton, we'd just moved insurance companies, and we'd insured it for a lot more, and honestly we didn't set it on fire.
The Orme Cup started in 1947, following a grudge match the year before between the Georgian Dragon, or drinkers in the Georgian Dragon and drinkers in the Navigation.
Now, which original tea hut, as we called it, wasn't, it was at the side of the pavilion, is now the Bowls Club hut, and that was made by W.E. Ward's my father in 1937, I think it was.
There was a little bit of rivalry between the two, and it resulted in a challenge cricket match, and it proved such a draw for the village that the following year they turned it into a competition, and Mr. Orme, who owned the mill, he was president of the cricket club at the time, and he put up a trophy for it, and it's been played for ever since.
It wasn't easy. People today, in them days, would work for the club, and they're generally all, but the people of the village were very generous and gave small donations, which was appreciated. And then Horace really were the kings of the county, because they only won with the brick pavilion in 1975, which was opened by Dennis Amis.
People are always cheating and trying to get ringers in who shouldn't really play, because it's supposed to be for people who live in the parish. But you'd be amazed where some people appear from, and they're suddenly all decked out in white cricket clothes. Nobody's told them that they're supposed to be people who can't play cricket and pretend to be. So plenty of arguments going on about, and that's really what lends a lot of the attraction. Nobody'd turn up if people had nothing to talk about.
By that time I'd met a girl called Melinda who lived on Walkfield Road, Melinda Pullen, and we became sort of quite friendly. And she was a member of the Scout band, and my brother then, Brian, he'd joined the Cubs, and then he also joined the Scout band, so I used to go down to the Scout hut with them, and the Scout hut sort of really became the focus of my life, really. The band used to play in competitions quite regularly, and I'd go along with my family. We went to places like Poole in Dorset and Bellevue, Manchester, and we sort of watched them in all the competitions. And then as time went on and I got a little bit older, the boys became more of an interest to me who were in the band. Quite a few fit blokes at that point or so, I thought. And so I got quite involved in the social side of being down at the Scout Hut.
Within 2 weeks of moving into the village, I was approached by Ron Chapman to see if I could help with the band. The thing was, when I got married, I said no more scouting, that's it, finished. But I got involved. 25 years later, I was still involved.
But then I became a Beaver Scout leader when my son Lee was 6, and that gave me the opportunity to nudge my way in. So eventually, well into my 30s, I did join the Scout band and sort of fulfil my dream of being part of that.
To be in the band, you had to be a member of the Scout or Guide Association. We started off with Scouts, and I think, because before I got here, some of the Scouts had sisters, they wanted to get involved because they were in the Guides, and that's how it evolved.
I played the tenor drum. It was about as good as it was going to get because I've got no musical talent whatsoever, and just keeping a rhythm on the tenor drum, that was a challenge for me.
We went into National Scout Band Championships. The one that's most memorable is the one at Poole, which I can't remember the date offhand. We came second in our class, Johan Budel's section, novice class, and on the way home, nobody slept on the way home from Poole.
We organised a Scout band reunion because by that time I was then married to Tim, who'd since left the band, and lots of people had sort of wandered away doing their careers and moving away from the area. But we organised a band reunion, and I think it was to commemorate Ron Chapman's, one of his special birthdays, 60th or 65th, I believe. And it was lovely to catch up with people who'd also come back for this reunion.
I think technology came in, videos, computers, and again, it probably wasn't cool to be in that type of band. It was a marching band. Nowadays, looking around the country, there aren't so many Scout bands as there used to be.
It's obvious to start with that one of the biggest problems in the village was, as I'm sure still happens nowadays, was people's attitude towards and from young people. It was apparent that there was a lack of things for them to do, and I know youngsters always say that, but I'm afraid that's how it is, and sometimes you've got to actively engage them rather than just say, well, there are things for you to do, go and find them. So there wasn't a youth club running in the village. I don't even know when the last one had been running, if there ever had been one.
We used to have a sort of youth club night on a Saturday, and we'd go down there and play records. They had a full-size snooker table there, which I believe is now in the British Legion. It's a proper snooker table, and then there was a smaller table which I think might have been Bagatelle, and we had table tennis table. There was a dartboard up there. We used to have lots of fun on a Saturday night going down there, all getting together.
Over the years, the attendance never really changed much. It was always about 20, 25, 30 a night. Obviously, over the years, it changed with different people coming and going as they got older and found other things.
I used to help Ben, the local policeman, and his wife Sue, with our local youth club, which we held in the village hall. Ben used to be upstairs doing all competitions with darts, snooker. He used to take the lads out and teach them to ride a motorbike, and us girls who were helping out, we used to help the girls with routines in the main hall, and we used to take them to dancing competitions all over Lichfield, Tamworth, everywhere.
The youth club carried on all the way through the time I was at Alrewas, and even unfortunately when the police decided that there was no longer a need for a policeman in Alrewas. Even though I was living there, I tried to keep the youth club going. But of course now I was working in Burton and I couldn't be there in the same way. And it just got more difficult for me to actually run it, administer it. It was passed over to the village or the youth club committee, and it carried on for a while, but unfortunately through funding and other issues it eventually closed.
There was 2 packs in the village and my daughter was in First Alrewas Brownies, and I know they were desperate for helpers in Second Alrewas, which had to start because the village had grown such a lot, so they needed another pack and more helpers. So I started helping a lady called Sheila Thompson. I don't think it was for very long before she actually stepped down and sort of left me holding the baby, so to speak. So Jackie and Linda came to help, and we sort of took it from there, really.
I think I came along because Shelley joined.
Yeah.
And as you do, you go along and they say, you know, we're desperate for leaders.
I was.
And I said, well, I'll help, but I don't want to go into uniform, but I'm quite happy to help.
We're at the village hall, in the upstairs room of the village hall.
Yes, that's
the
right.
First Alrewas were downstairs, and First Alrewas moved upstairs, and then I can't quite remember where we went from that because we had a stint at the school.
Yes.
I think we had some time at the Methodist and also at the Scout hut.
You were very organised, Sandra, always had it planned. So every week it was planned out.
We worked
knew
on
what we were going to do.
badges. So we'd perhaps do a fitness badge, and we would do a variety of fitness things, and we used to go out on walks, didn't we, and things like that.
We did,
yeah. I mean, sometimes it was hard work. I used to come home from work and have to sort of grab everything together and get it all down there.
But I remember her mum being very concerned that we were all going to London, and her asking me would I keep hold of her, you know, hold her hand most of the day, sort of. She was very concerned. And as soon as we got off the coach, she went, just disappeared. I thought,
oh dear. We used to do an annual float as well for the muscular dystrophy fate, wasn't it? And that was always good, and we won a 3rd prize, a 2nd prize, and a 1st prize.
Yes, that's how we did it.
That's how we did it. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
So we had strict instructions. Yes, that we turned up at the Legion. And we were not allowed to wear coats. Now this was adults as well, so they'd go home with instructions to wear as many t-shirts and jumpers under, because they were very thin cotton dresses as possible. And then this one day it did actually rain, and I thought, this is stupid, so I phoned everybody up and told them to put their coats on, much to the disgust of some of the other leaders, I'm afraid.
I joined in 1965. I can't believe I joined in 65 when I just had Miles, but anyway, I did.
Well, I joined the society at the beginning of 1985. We'd been living in the village for about a year, and we didn't have a social life as such, and we thought it might be a good idea to join.
I joined the society in 1968, and we came to Alrewas in 1967. And the children were young, the youngest was 4, and Sarah would be about 5 then, and I just wanted something else, something to do.
We didn't know there was a dramatic society actually, and the first we knew was that a flyer was dropped through the door to say that they were having an open evening.
And I saw an advert which may have been put in by Audrey Hall, and at the post office, you know, the little box at the post office. Saying there was a drama group and they were obviously after, you know, people to join. And it was at the village hall upstairs. So there must have been something in me that wanted to do it, because I came home and said to Dom when he came home from work, told him, and then sort of on the due date, I promptly went upstairs to the village hall.
It was in the little room upstairs, and I crept up, very, very shy. And I can't remember the name of the play, but they cast me as Serafina, who had an accent. First time I ever tried, and I had to talk in a kind of Italian or French or whatever, some sort of accent. And they gave me the part, and I was amazed. But that's my first venture.
They were reading a comedy. I didn't know anything about play readings or stages or proscenium arches or anything of this kind. And they just sort of asked me to read. Well, whilst I was there, other people were reading, so I just followed suit, you know, and read and whatever. And they must have been desperate because before I left the village hall, they said, "Right, you got the part."
The 80s, late 80s, I think, I started. And I really just went down to start building sets and things. Well, perhaps in the back of my mind I thought, well, I might get up and do something.
The redoubtable Val Folkes, she decided to take a risk, and she was going to direct J.B. Priestley's Dangerous Corner, and she took a risk and gave most of us newcomers parts, and it did ruffle a few feathers, I think, in those days, but however, we gave it our all, and and as I recall, it was a great success.
It was Dangerous Corner, and it was a big part, and Val Folkes was directing it, bless her. Told me I walked like a cowhand when I should be walking like a gentleman. And that was terrifying. I learnt the whole play, first time I've never done it, but I learnt the whole play. So I could see so nervous, I could see, when I was doing my lines, I knew where they were on the page. I didn't eat for 3 days. I didn't eat during the performance, Thursday, Friday and Saturday.
Then when we came to Alrewas, the very first person we met was Audrey Hall, because Audrey was involved with a group called Welcome Wagon or something. She came round to tell us about the village and things. And when Quinton said he was involved, "Oh," she said, "we've got a drama society." And so she got him involved in Lichfield. And he also got involved in Alrewas, and he did acting and technical and did the lighting.
You never knew if it was the rubber burning on the dimmer pack or Quinton's cigarette smoke that you could smell. He used to sit up in the gods in the heat with long pieces of wood pushing up and pulling down the old dimmer packs that used to be up there, and the heat was tremendous.
There was a scene where someone was supposed to be murdered, but it was to look like a suicide. And I think the murderer was Steve Bullock and the victim was Tony Jones. And he was supposed to be shot, but unfortunately the gun didn't go off. So Steve had to club him on the back of the head with it. It never was, of course, explained how he committed suicide in such a way.
Dr. Platt and other people were all lying down with sheets over them. I don't know what they were supposed to be.
I think Grecians or Romans
Probably,
or something like that.
And Mrs. Buckley started laughing and shouting out, and soon the audience were in an uproar. And of course we were backstage, we didn't know what was going happening.
on. No.
And I forget what they said, but actually Dr. Platt had lost his cover and he was showing more than he should. And Mrs. Grimley was shouting up about it, and everybody was in laughter. And Dr. Platt shouted back, "You all behave yourselves, you can say." He said, "I've seen all you've got, now you can see what I've got," or something like that.
I think one of the memorables that I wasn't in but I prompted in was at the church, A Man for All Seasons. That was fantastic.
And then we had to be out of the village hall because they were going to alter it. So we did the most wonderful, wonderful production called A Man for All Seasons in the church. Well, it was really a wonderful, you know, everybody said how fabulous it was, and of course heavily involved who was John Colston, the local vicar.
I think over the last few years we've perhaps pushed the boundaries a little bit in terms of content and language, which 30 years ago it would have not got through the committee, I'm sure, because, well, they would have thought that the village wasn't ready for such things.
Another good one. So, what have we learned? What haven't we learnt? There's been so much. As long as there's enough for the homework, that'll do me. What about these other points on the map? Have you noticed in there? Oh yes! And I know what your idea is too. We'll get them to go round and find the rest of the signs. Great idea. They could all go and look for all of them. Hello in there. Use the maps to find the signs, just like we have. Then use your smartphone or tablet to scan the QR codes. And you'll find cool stuff about Alrewas too. Enjoy yourselves. We have. Bye. Bye.